A very good Thursday evening, Stats Race Lens users and race fans. Happy to be with you ahead of Saturday's Pacific Classic, the highlight of the Del Mar season. And, of course, Alabama Saturday at Saratoga. We're going to get a chance to bookend the conversation with the Pacific Classic and the supporting stakes, as well as the Alabama tonight. We'll look back at a little bit of the Haskell action, too, because the same team is assembled. Happy to have Christina with us, as well as Ellis, and we'll say good evening. Let me start with Christina.
It's good to be with you guys once more, and definitely looking forward to Saturday here at Del Mar, guys. Grads will be back aboard, and I have to tell you, Accelerate schooled about an hour ago, and he looks like $1 million. Looks like he is sitting on a big race this weekend.
Well, he only gets $600,000 if he wins.
That's good enough for me.
That was a little purse humor. Ellis, Starr, good evening.
Good evening, Steve. Good evening, Christina, and welcome everybody to our Pacific Classic webinar.
Ellis, we got a lot to do tonight, and we want to catch everybody up on what's been going on. And we probably should talk a little bit and turn things over to you to kick things off. Talk a little bit about some operation topics.
Yeah, I just want to say to everybody, as somebody that handicaps using race lens nearly every day, I recognize some of the frustration a lot of folks have had recently. And on behalf of Equibase and the team, we want to apologize for it. And we sent out an email in an effort to be transparent to everybody. If you haven't gotten it, you should have gotten it, outlining some of the issues. And they had to do with Stats itself, which had to do with this giant sports company and their other lines of business as well, but it really did affect us too. And in order to be transparent, we sent out that email. I'm not going to go into details because it's boring. You want to get on to handicapping. But we proactively extended every current subscription. So if you're listening to this and you're a subscriber and you haven't checked the email, you got a 1-month additional subscription added to your subscription, and there's nothing you need to do. If it hasn't been done, it'll be done over the next few days. And when you check in your purchases, you'll be able to see that 1 month. Those are for the Equibase subscribers. If you have any additional concerns or questions about the recent issues with operations, please send an email to statsfeedback@equibase.com, and myself or Craig or one of our team will answer them. And we want you to know we appreciate your business. Again, we know how frustrating it is because we use it all the time. And we'll do everything we can to keep this wonderful product going. And later in the webinar, I've got one feature that everybody should love. But let's get on to handicapping the Pacific Classic Day Card.
Absolutely, and talk about the promotions in a minute. Let's get right into it. And Christina Blacker, this group of horses, I talked after the draw at the Brigantine the other night that it's a much more accomplished field than people seem to want to give credit for. You've got almost all graded stake winners at some level or another. You've got a South American import that we don't even know what this horse could be. And then you've got the leader in the handicap division when it comes to Accelerate. And then 3 very, very solid horses that have got real credentials and that have run races that are competitive with Accelerate. Take us into Saturday's feature.
I think you're absolutely right, Steve. I think that Accelerate especially is having one of his best years, and he just doesn't seem to get the respect of a top-level horse yet from what I see and from my perspective. And you have to consider, he has 3 wins this year and 4 starts. He has 2 Grade 1 victories at the 1.25 mile distance. I think a lot of people want to see him maybe ship before he gets a bit more respect would be my guess, but he did go to Oaklawn. He was second in the Oaklawn handicap, and ironically, he was second to a Southern California horse that day. So I don't know when Accelerate is really going to get the sort of respect of a top-level horse, but hopefully it is very soon, and hopefully a big performance on Saturday can kind of add to his already sparkling resume, in my opinion. I want to say that work on August 12th, his most recent work, which you can see sort of down bottom left-hand side of his past performances, I was here to see that morning. It was a 7 furlong drill. 126 flat, the only one going 7 furlongs that day. It was a very strong work, and the track was pretty deep that day. That was really what John Stadler needed to see to kind of give him the green light to go ahead and run this weekend. They talked a little bit about prepping him in the San Diego, but ultimately decided to go ahead and just train up to this race. Now, of course, Stadler already had Catalina Cruiser, and that was a big part of the decision whether or not to run Accelerate in the San Diego. So here they are now. We're coming off a bit of a layoff with this horse. And if you look at John Stadler's just numbers in general, he's going well right now in his trainer profile. He is 21% over the last 30 days or so. And I can tell you a lot of those races are in stakes races. But let's pull up a little bit more information on John Stadler, though, himself. And I want to pull the stat with regard to him off of these breaks, the 61 to 180 days. That's sort of the time frame that we're at. This is in dirt routes, and this is very strong. This is a 25% win clip for him. I went one step further with this as well and just sorted it by finish position because I wanted to see who these winners were. And you're going to notice a lot of stakes horses. Catalina Cruiser was one of them. Stellar Wind many times off the layoff for a top level victory. Accelerate himself has run well in this scenario before. He's down sort of middle of the page there. He's been second off the break for John Stadler. And this is one thing that I have just personally noticed, kind of a shift in his training. And I think Stellar Wind was the one that really kind of turned it for him a little bit with his dirt horses. I'm seeing him just take a little bit more time between starts to get those big performances out of them. We'll head back to the past performances here on Accelerate. And I want to take a look kind of at this time frame last year, because he was third in the Pacific Classic last year. We can go ahead and watch that replay. He was coming off of a very big effort in the San Diego. So last year they prepped him in the race. He was an 8.5 length winner of the San Diego. He comes here to the Pacific Classic, and I think that big prep was just a little bit too much for him. It was that in combination with the fact that you're going to see here early in these stages. There's Arrogate heading into the gate. He was the 8 horse. Of course, all eyes on him this time last summer. And then Collected, another Bob Baffert trainee who would eventually go on to win this race and kind of start himself with a really strong run. But Accelerate right there in between in the Green Silks of Costa Horones. This could not have been what they wanted to see. He's right in the middle of these two Baffert monsters. You have Collected on the inside. All the buzz was about him. Arrogate off his big efforts in Dubai, then a little disappointing in the San Diego. We were all wondering if he could rebound at that point. And Accelerate just kind of gets forced in between these two horses. And he's a horse that I think he's, as many are, much more comfortable when he's able to dictate things, when he doesn't have that kind of pressure from the inside and from the outside. Arrogate, as we kind of remember from last summer, he didn't take to the track here too well. You're going to see him kind of go on and finish, I think, just on class alone. But at this stage down the backstretch, Collected is what I call dragging Accelerate along. Each time Accelerate kind of tries to make a little bit of a move, Collected drags him on a little further and lets out another notch. You can go ahead and just kind of fast forward to the finish of this race, because you sort of get the picture that I'm trying to paint here. He didn't have everything his own way. He took a lot of pressure. He was coming off that big prep. And because of that, I think he really regrets that he's just going to sort of fade along the inside there. He's going up and down in the late stages of this race. But I think Stadler is training differently now. I think this horse is coming in fresh. And I want to look at the pace projector as well for this race, because I want to see where Accelerate is going to be sitting. And I want to know who's going to be putting the pressure on him. And it looks like he will go ahead and be able to make that lead. You know, horses from the inside will show a bit of speed. The Lieutenant won't be too far just because of his post position. He'll drop back, I think, at some stage, but he's going to have to hold some type of position there. And then let's go ahead and sort this on the left-hand side as far as late pace. Who's going to be finishing in this race? And you'll see that Prime Attraction is one of those horses that he can close pretty fast as well, whether he's mid-pack, whether he's on the front end. He's a horse that finishes strongly. And he's actually the next horse that I want to take a look at when we go back to the past performances, because I've always been a big fan of Prime Attraction. He's a beautiful horse. He's a son of Unbridled Song out of an AP&D mare. He's just one of those horses that's going to get your pick of the paddock each and every time you see him out there. And I don't think he's had a real fair chance going the 1.25 miles on dirt. If you kind of piece through his past performances, you can see the big cap race on March the 10th for him. It's going to be 2 starts back. He ends up 6th across the wire. He's defeated 20 lengths, but then he goes to the sidelines after that race. So I'm going to give him a pass off of that race. The other 1.25 miles on dirt that he has is all the way back in May of last year. again, it's just a terrible race. It was the Gold Cup at Santa Anita. He was 7th, defeated nearly 17 lengths that day. But again, he goes to the sidelines and he comes back, off a little break after that race. So I still have some faith in Prime Attraction. I don't know if he is a horse that can win this race, but I do think he's a horse that loves Del Mar. If you go to his lifetime record, you'll see, or his horse for course track record. He's 2 for 2 over this surface. I think he's going to run his race. And Jim Cassidy actually made some pretty bullish quotes to the stable notes team here, saying that, look, this horse does his best running when he can kind of be free and out there on the lead, and they're going to go ahead and let him run away from there, whether that's on the lead or whether that's stalking, that he's going to be involved pace-wise. So he won't be too far off of it. I think Dr. Dorr won't be too far off of it. And depending on how much pressure they put on Accelerate, we'll see if he can come with one of those big races. The X factor in this race is Roman Rosso, and Steve kind of alluded to it. This is a very interesting horse. He's a big, strong-looking horse. I got a chance to get a look at him earlier last week. He carries a lot of muscle, and Baffert told me that he's one of those that will run all day, which I think you see pretty often from the South American horses. And if you look at his earnings, lifetime record, he's a 5-time winner in 8 starts, but he has earned nearly $550,000. You have to be a pretty good horse in South America to start racking up that kind of change in the bank. And it's mostly in part due to the Latino Americano. That's his last win, last time out. It's a Group 1 race. It happened to be in Uruguay this year. I actually did a little research on the race last night. It travels each and every year. It was in Uruguay. I found the replay and took a look at it, and I tweeted that if anybody at home wants to go ahead and watch and just kind of see what he does. He runs like a Baffert horse. He stalks the pace. He has a very high cruising speed. He's in the bridle. He's kind of steady, and he just keeps coming. He didn't really blow his competition away, but he did not give up. He was sort of relentless in the way that he runs. So I think with a little time under Bob Baffert's tutelage, he's going to come with a big run. And I think you have to respect this barn if they're going to put him in a race like this. But I also pulled the stat last night about Baffert with foreign shippers, because, so many horses just come up under his program, and they're horses that begin with Bob, and they are horses that he's able to, cultivate that talent from the beginning and see where they fit. But if you look at Baffert with foreign shippers and first after the trainer switch, this is, like many statistics for Bob Baffert, one of those that is very, very strong. You're going to see in a second, 33%.
Yeah, having a little trouble with this one. Hold on one second, Christina. Not sure.
That's all right. We can go back to.
Let me change
here
it
we
again.
go. So,
no, just.
It will
Not sure why. I'm not typing. I'm not scrolling. Hold on one second.
Okay. But yeah, as I was saying, it's just something that Baffert's good at with just about everything he does, and this is really no difference for him. So we can. He's the 4 horse. Go back to Roman Rosso. But then Pratt takes the call too, and actually the day that I got to see him, Pratt was out there in the morning and was working him. So Pratt has had a chance to get to know this horse, just for anybody that's kind of wondering about that. He has been on him in the morning, so he does sort of know what he's sitting on. So Baffert with foreign shippers.
And a trainer change, first with the trainer, right?
First after trainer switch, yeah. And I think I might have done all surfaces too. I'm not sure if I think it was, include all starters. There we go.
Oh, we always recommend you start, when you do these queries, and you've done this, of course, you want to start with the biggest set, and then you can look at more specifics, because you want to get a feel for overall, and then you can look at more specifics. So you could do graded stakes, but this is the basic one here. So first after trainer switch, foreign shippers, there's your answer right there. So.
Yeah, there it is. And Plain Air, that was in a stakes race. Move Tahij, that was in a stakes race. Those are very easy to open up too. It's just one of those features kind of on stats that I like. If you go ahead and click Plain Air, it's just going to open those past performances for you. And if you wanted to know exactly which race we're talking about, it's highlighted right there. You can see it was the Astra Stakes. So that was the first time, Baffert took over this foreign shipper, a winner against stakes competition. So again, I think you just have to respect this horse. He's won. I think he's gonna show that kind of strong, steady, high cruising speed the entire way around there. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a piece of it by any means. The last horse that I wanted to touch on, Ellis, was the Lieutenant. He's the one down from the inside, and probably most commonly known as Justifies big brother. He's the 5-year-old son of Sage Magic. He justifies half by street sense. And so there is a lot of pressure, I think, on this guy. He certainly is going to have a stallion career, but a grade 1 victory this weekend could mean quite a bit. And he's run behind a few of these horses before. You can see Dr. Door's names in the past performances there a couple times. The one race that kind of stuck out to me between the two of them was right there that you're looking at. That's the Santana Mile. Dr. Door was pretty strong that day, and I think Dr. Door is a horse that is at his best at Santa Anita. I think at that time when they were hooking up, the Lieutenant was kind of on his way up, and Dr. Door was really peaking at that moment. And then the last race that he comes out of, the Suburban behind Diversify. I mean, Diversify is just freaky good right now. You can see the italicized name there. You know that he's come back to win. If you wanted to open that chart up, it's very easy to take a look and see where he did come back to win. Of course, that was the Whitney. And I think he ran a very respectable race to Diversify last time out. I know that he's a horse, talking a little bit more about the Lieutenant, that's had some kind of minor issues. He had some ankle issues in the past. 2017 was one of those years that they just had to stop and start on him a little bit. But he really is at the top of his game right now. I think he needs a good trip from this inside post. I'm a little bit concerned about that just because I don't want him to get shuffled too far back. But he's got the right guy in the saddle right now. Drayton Van Dyke is really having the summer of his career. Stakes race after stakes race, he has been so tied in to Bob Baffert's barn. He's riding some of the best 2-year-olds for him, for Jerry Hollendorfer. And I wanted to look at Drayton in stakes races. You know, if you look over the last several years for him and just go by class, all starters, yep, exactly like that. And then all the stakes races that he has competed in, he's performing, and he's performing on the dirt. He's performing on the turf, sprinting, routing, young horses, the older horses. He's making all the right moves. So I think Mike McCarthy they struck up a pretty good partnership with City of Light in the first place, and there it is. He's 14%. If you sort it by finish, you'll see that actually the last 5 of those are here this summer. So I like this team. I like this horse, and I think he's coming into the race right now as good as he ever has. Just sort of summing it up, guys, Accelerate is definitely the horse to beat, but I think that there is some value with the others underneath if you're going to play exactas, trifectas, if you're playing the pick 4, you know, if you want to include a prime attraction, you're going to get a big price on him. Roman Rosso, you know, how can you leave Bob Baffert off? You'll kind of be kicking yourself at the end of the day if he jumps up with a shocker. And definitely the Lieutenant. I think he's just coming into the race as good as he ever has into a competition.
Well, some thoughts, Ellis? Can we beat Accelerate?
Well, Christina and I are on the same 3 horses in a slightly different order. And this was one in where I've been a fan off and on of Prime Attraction, and I think this is the day to do it. And the reason is pretty simple. On paper, a lot of folks are going to look at Prime Attraction, and they're going to see a horse that has he has 4 wins, 3 on dirt, 1 on turf. His biggest win came in the Native Diver in a grade 3 on the dirt. And his last race came on the turf. But I'm thinking of this horse as a horse that's maturing now at 5, and maybe he's just going to get his best race. And that last effort in the Eddie Reed earned a 123 Equibase speed figure. And you'll notice Storm had not ridden him before, and he got on for the first time, and the strategy for Jim Cassidy was to go to the lead. And it was a fairly fast pace, and yet he battled head and head down to the wire, getting beat a neck and a head on the wire in that race. That 123, now I go back and look, because, you know, you've got to beat the favorite, and I look at Accelerate, how fast he's run. Certainly 4 consistent races in a row in terms of speed figures, 3 wins and a neck loss, 119 and 120. Now, you can compare speed figures no matter whose speed figure you use from one surface to another, because that's what a speed figure does. It normalizes for surfaces and distances. And so in my mind, if Prime Attraction repeats his last race, if Accelerate runs his best, they're going to be together on the wire. And the difference, of course, is Accelerate opens at 8-5. He's going to be lower. Prime Attraction opens at 8-1. He's probably going to be there. Now, what I like more about Prime Attraction is the fact that you saw that he went to the lead here. And if I go back to the pace projector, which we looked at with Christina earlier, you will see the projector shows Accelerate in front. But Accelerate has never led wire to wire except in the San Diego last year. It's not normally a stack. As Christina pointed out, last year he got between horses in this race, and that wasn't what he wanted to do. His last three wins in that second this year, or since December, have all been from just off the pace. And when you sort on the running style, you only have two horses here, and they're Prime Attraction and Beast View. And whenever you have two horses that have early running style, usually the one that's inside has an edge. So when I consider that, I consider Prime Attraction to be the horse that will be on the lead. I'm arguing with this. I'm going with the running style instead. We already pointed out he's got the second best late pace in the race because he can close if he needs to. When I go back to PPs, you've got a horse that's as fast as Accelerate that may be on the lead and relaxed. A lot will depend on what Roman Rosso does, which I'll get into in a second. But certainly he looks as good at this. And, of course, he has won on dirt. He won a grade 3 on dirt. He was second to Accelerate in the Pasquale, which is a very fine effort here over the 118. 2.5 in front of Mubtahiz, who's a multiple graded stakes winner, one of those horses for Baffert that we saw that he'd won with off a layoff before. So I'm going to give Prime Attraction my top billing. Now, on Roman Rosso, and I'll admit I apologize, I forgot to queue up these videos. Christina did tweet it out. I had both of them queued up, the Gran Premio Nacional and the Gran Premio Latino Americano. And what was really interesting for me in watching these, you can Google them, they're there for everybody, is that
I just tweeted them out.
Oh, great.
I just tweeted
okay,
out
everybody follow Steve on Twitter and check it out. So I will tell you, though, because I watched it, in this mile and 9/16 race, he led from start to finish in a field of 10, and Roman Rosso did. And then in the last race, he sat in second in the early stages and came from off the pace. Now, he was amazing in these two. He reminded me of a couple of Baffert horses that don't come to mind right now. That real good horse that ran bad in the Breeders' Cup. Steve is going to remind me.
Game on Dude.
Game on Dude, right. It's just a free runner. When he got his way, sayonara, baby. When he didn't get his way on the lead, there was a problem. And when he got taken out in the Breeders' Cup early, he folded up. But otherwise, he was very good, particularly at Del Mar. This is that kind of horse. He has tremendous cruising speed. The one race that does have running lines, you can see wire to wire. Most of these were, except the last one, where he sat second off the pace, drew off, field of 12. There's an Equibase speed figure for these foreign races. It's not as good as the 120, 119, 118 of Accelerate. It's not as good as the 123 last time out on the grass for Prime Attraction. But this is also very interesting. Christina made the point, and I realized that she was talk about this workout of Accelerates. 126, 7 furlongs, Del Mar, August 12th. Well, I just happened to notice when I was thinking about it that Roman Rosso worked out a week earlier, 126 as well from the gate. So he's got to be fit, and certainly a horse to contend because he's going to be in the top flight. And Accelerate, I really can't say anything bad about him. 4 good races in a row. Last year, he didn't run well after winning the San Diego. This year, he scratched out of San Diego to let his entry mate, Catalina Cruiser, win the race. And certainly, he has what it takes to win with his best. 85 days, Stadler's not a concern. If neither Roman Rosso or Prime Attraction don't fire, Accelerate's going to win. But I'm going to take a shot and make Prime Attraction my top pick. I'm going to use Roman Rosso, maybe a small win bet as well, even though because it's Baffert, he's not the 8-1 that Prime Attraction is. He's 5-1, I believe, the morning line. And I'll just play a very simple 3-horse exacta box here in this race.
Nice. I'm a little surprised that there's been virtually no mention of Pavel and his potential in here, and the fact that off of the performance at Churchill, he feels like the horse that still has got upside, And I think the Lieutenant, given what we've seen this year as a full 5-year-old horse, as a mature horse, both of them have run at this point races that are within, the zip code. And I don't know why anybody was not immediately intrigued by this field, because there's a lot more going on. And I don't, I'm not looking to disparage players, but if you looked at this race and couldn't see that there was potential to go beyond the obvious, then you're not really, you're not looking at racing seriously. You're really not taking information that is there to be gleaned. A mile and a quarter is always, we have the same situation in the Alabama. The mile and a quarter is a big factor in here, and it's always different than the races that most of these horses are running. I mean, it's obviously one of the reasons Accelerate is, a likely winner type in here, because he's won it at a mile and a quarter twice. But, that's what makes the Argentinian exciting and interesting. Pavel certainly has had his, chances. He's not won at a mile and a quarter, but it feels like he's a better horse now than he's ever been. The Lieutenant has got that performance coming out of the Suburban. Nobody was beating Diversify. He was a horse that was coming at the finish, and he's got the positioning to save ground every step. If you look, if we look at the pace projection, he figures to sit a tremendous trip. And certainly getting Drayton Van Dyke back aboard, it doesn't hurt, as Christina laid out how brilliantly he's been riding. I find this a very deep and compelling race, and I think the pace ends up being pretty honest in here, because there's too many horses with the same draft along style. And then you fold in the short stretch at Del Mar, and we'll see if some horses move early that are stalking. I'm hard pressed to come up with a decision. I know that I'm going to bet the Lieutenant, though, just because of how progressive he's been looking. And I was there at Belmont for the Suburban, and recognized that without Diversify, the Lieutenant, the Lieutenant comes into here with a graded stake winning streak. So I think we've got a terrific Pacific Classic in store.
So Steve, let me address a couple points. Well, Steve,
yeah.
let me address a couple points, and also I got a message that one of our listeners had a question to answer. So let me talk about a couple more things. And I was actually going to talk about the things you mentioned. I totally forgot. So thank you for reminding me. First of all, a listener or attendee asked about whether there's any concern for Roman Rosso not having a prep. I would answer that because we showed the stat earlier of Baffert with the 61 to 80 days into routes. He's winning 38%. And when we went also to the other one, which was the stakes that I had done earlier, he had those two winners, Plain Air, and I forget the other, Christina, you could chime in, and they both won stakes races off layoffs, and they hadn't had prep races. So I think Christina and I think Steve, certainly you can answer, I don't have a concern about this horse, Roman Rosso, not having a race first, because he has that 126 workout, and it was just March. It wasn't a year ago. Anybody want to chime in on that? And then I'll address
I think
a couple of points Steve made. It
was Move Tahij was the other horse that was off the layoff. And again, it was a stakes race that, first time with Baffert. And I think when it comes to Bob Baffert, so often, he's just one of those horsemen that trains and calls those audibles, makes those decisions. If he's putting this horse in this race, he's not leading a horse over there to be just, disappointed or to be embarrassed. If he
not a prep.
is seeing enough from him in the morning, this horse is ready. There are very, few barns that I never question fitness when it comes to Baffert. That's how he trains. He trains for fitness.
So two other points, and Steve, I appreciate it again, because I was going to mention Pavel, and because I knew people would be asking the question, because I think personally he's vulnerable at 7-2. I'm taking a stand against him entirely. And the reason I'm doing that is because he's not bred to get a mile and a quarter. He may be outrun his breeding, but when I look at Creative Cause, and I think I might have this queued up, if not, I could do it really quick. These are dirt routes, but when you go to the Creative Causes foals and you can modify the distance, and these aren't stakes, this is everything, and modify the distance, and I'm just going to go even 9.5 to 12 furlongs. So we'll include everything in here. And he's had a lot of success with his progeny at 9 furlongs. It's very quick to do it here, but he's 0 for 6 at these distances. Not even one horse even on the board, and that was Pavel. The other thing, and because I remember the dam of Pavel is Mons Venus, and she had a tremendous foal. Christina, you remember Cara Cortado. That's her stat. She never ran. But when I go to her, go back and look at her foals, which I will do right now. I get Pavel back up. And Mons Venus. And there's 2 ways to do this. This is all routes on dirt. You'll see, okay, they're the winners. They were at 1 1/8, 1 mile 16th. That's Pavel. But when I go and switch to all starters, I will see one of her big foals. You can see many winners. Cara Cortado, who won a lot of money on the circuit, $800,000, and mostly on all weather and turf. But the fact is that you can see he ran, second the Shoemaker mile, third a 1 1/8. He had distance limitations, 1 1/8. I don't think there's a 1 1/4 here, Steve. That was my take of why Pavel was out. Certainly the Lieutenant, I would consider with a shot. Mike McCarthy, one of the stats I looked up real quick here. McCarthy had something very interesting. He had a kind of a cold start when he came to Southern California a while back, but that's not the case anymore. Mike McCarthy, here it is. This is all stakes, 2 for 7, and I remember, I'm not going to do it, but if I took out stakes, just routes, he's 10 for 36 with a 99% positive ROI in the last 2 years. So Lieutenant, I certainly would agree with you, has a big shot here, and I kind of neglected to leave him off. I won't leave him off my tickets.
And just to add a name, only because Baltus has gotten hot. 235. Any thoughts, Christina, about 235? Who kind of ran around first time at Del Mar in that San Diego. He just kind of chased, but the allowance performance at Santa Anita was pretty darn good. And from a fig standpoint, it fit. And Baltus, that race was a nice race. The problem, one of the things that is really a mystery this season is this Del Mar surface, because there's horses, and some people were asking, why didn't Unique Bella run? Well, first of all, it was kind of crazy to even think that she would, but the way she ran, it didn't look like she was all that comfortable over the surface 3 weeks ago. And it's one of the reasons I've been betting Del Mar kind of just sporadically. When there's been carryovers, I've looked at it, but I get the sense that there's some horses that are really not, getting over the surface comfortably. I don't know if that was a contributing factor with this runner or not, but Baltus is all of a sudden his horses that didn't look good early in the meet, they look a lot better now.
I think what it is that it's just a little bit deeper of a surface than you normally would expect here at Del Mar. And, we have the same track superintendent that's keeping an eye on all the surfaces, but you can do your best to try and make them as similar as possible. But at the end of the day, the climate down here is very different, and it has been a very warm summer, a very humid summer, whereas normally we get those sort of cool mornings and we have the marine layer to start the day. When that rolls in off the sea, it's adding a lot of moisture to the track, which would pack it down, which makes it a little firmer and makes it a little faster and just easier to bounce over. because it's been so warm and it's been so humid, I think that's why it's just a little bit looser and a little bit deeper of a surface in general. And some horses, I think it's just benefiting from time here. It's a safe surface, which is the most important thing, but they just need a few works or maybe even a race over it to kind of get going. And perhaps that is what you will see from 235, just having a race over the track. He might run a little better with a little bit more fitness under his belt with that San Diego and a few works since then. And I think also, Baltus was a little cold just to start the meet. I think he was 0 for maybe 21, 22 into the first week. All of a sudden things turned, the momentum shifted, and they're really coming into their own and hitting at that percentage that you're used to now. But I think it's just a deeper surface than you normally have on the main track here at Del Mar.
Well, I think it's a terrific race. Let's get to a couple of the other graded stakes and the Del Mar Handicap. Ellis, start the conversation. This is a good group.
It's always intriguing, and we talk about trainer intent and owner intent, and so many this year, particularly with a lot of owners buying parts of horses. One of the things I use Race Lens for, and some people might think it doesn't play into handicapping, I think it does, is when I see a horse changing circuits or changing trainers that's private, I want to see if there's an ownership change. So I'm going to give you an example of that using Kenji Storm. Kenji Storm ran in last year's Eddie Reed on the grass, finished fourth, 9-2, set the pace and tired badly. And I go and look, and you can look at the chart, and you look at the owner line. So it'll be here in a second. This is right before the layoff and the trainer change. And I have this chart queued up. There it is. And so she was fourth and owned by Head of Plains Partners and KM Enterprises and Carrillo. Okay. I go back now. That was the March 18th. That was last year. And got the right race. That was this one. So go back here to the American. So I know I saw this. And Kenji Storm here is the sixth horse, so sixth here. Well, I made the note wrong. Oh, it was here. I'm sorry, there was this change. So Kenji Storm was privately purchased after running sixth at Del Mar, changed trainers, of course, it was partially owned by KM Enterprises, but Head of Plains bought in. And for those that don't know Head of Plains, I know you, Steve, and Christina know, but, these are the folks that have pieces of Audible, Justify, Yoshida, Beach Patrol, Uni, most of which they didn't have pieces of before. And they buy horses for breeding and also to run stakes. And so
no breeding. There's no breeding. There's no breeding. South Human isn't buying for. He's not a breeder. He buys strictly to race. It's a very strange scenario, and he's buying. These are very small pieces that they take. There are horses that he campaigns on. That he actually does campaign. Lady Eli was an actual horse that he campaigned, that he owned entirely. The buy-ins are 5 and 10% buy-ins. They're very small.
All right. But you'll admit they're for horses that somebody thinks has potential.
As potential for what I've yet to figure out. To basically, because it's very strange. To lease the racing rights of SF Bloodstock is basically what they did, and so did Starlight. That they basically were only in for the racing purposes. When the reason you would get involved with horses is, for the most part, especially mares, is on the breeding side. And so it's a very strange. No one's explained it fully. What is at work here? But it's very strange.
Okay, well, you just poked a hole in my intent scenario, but I'm willing to take that. I get it. So in any event, the horse wasn't much allowance quality, and all of a sudden, as we talked about, you talked about Richard Baltus with 235. The horse is off as a 5-year-old from July to March, comes back, and after running some good allowance races, just dominates really nicely, runs back to that race, and then comes back and runs in the stakes race, gets beaten a length and 3/4, and then runs second after leading in the grade 2 Charlie Whittingham, who it's in the post, who's back in here, who arguably, is one of the favorites in this race. And what was interesting was when you start to look at, I tried to imagine the pace scenario in this race, and you see that win, Allowance Company came wire to wire, tried to lead wire to wire in the Eddie Reed last year, almost wire to wire in the comeback, and then last time out, sat second, made the lead, and ended up second, 2 1/4, again, clear of the third horse. And I look at the pace projector, and in this case, already that Kenji Storm has the rail, but the pace projector, it shows Ashley Loves Sugar on top, but when you look at the running style, which you have to do, this is a lone front runner. So this scenario is a little bit off. It's much more likely that much less likely that the 8 horse with Joel Rosario particularly, who's riding Ashley Loves Sugar, is going to go, which puts Kenji Storm on the lead. He's got late pace as good as any of the others within 5 points. He's on the lead here. So when I go back and look at that kind of a scenario off that last effort, which was rock solid, it's in the post, I could see him reversing the position here. And certainly, I don't know why the line's not in here. It was on the main page, but it hasn't got ingested yet. But he was a decent price, if I remember correctly. Consistent Equibase speed figures, and he was second at 10 furlongs. So I don't think 11 is going to be a problem. So here's my top pick. And then I go all the way to the outside because it says the mile and 3/8, and post position really doesn't mean much at all. And I'm going to Fashion Business. And he ran badly, there's no question, in the Eddie Reed. Before that, in the Manhattan, and I'm going to bring that up in the video, and Flavien Prat rode him there and rode him here and gets back on. This race, of course, was tremendous. Now, Spring Quality had to scratch last week, but when you watch the run that Fashion Business put in, he's going to be on the outside here. I'm just going to skip to near the end of the race. Give a second to cue it up. And he just flew, as you can see still here, looking as he's 9th, he's 7th. He's going to be beating the length here. It's going to be, I should have checked the post position. I believe he is. Was it 12? It says 10. Flying on the outside in the navy blue. And going to be in this blanket finish at the end with everybody.
I think he's just inside of where you have those look like the little red feather studs. Yeah, I think that might be him.
There it is. There's the LRF. Yep, that's it. Thank you, Christina. Appreciate that. Get lost for a second. So, best late pace in the race. He's got a shot. And then I was going to the beginning talk about a new feature, but I'm going to use Christina's husband's horse, Christina's horse, I should say, Ritzy AP here, as an angle. Now, this is the only horse in the race that came with an angle. For those that don't know that, anybody that's new, angles are, some are pre-populated with the race lens. They have various things that factors that you can check. You can get notified when horses are running, and you can check the back test over the past year. And this is an angle that we put in. We added another 20 angles into the product automatically a while back, and it's called Form Route Never Far Back. I'll show it briefly, but it lit up as green because it's profitable. It has a good win percentage and a positive ROI, and it's going to come up on the back test page. And this angle actually came up 348 times in the last year, 325 races, horses, with a 22% win and a 2% prop, so it beats the take. This has to do with a horse coming back in 1 to 7 days in a route who was close, less than 4 lengths throughout the race from start to finish. And it shows fitness, it shows other stuff, but what's cool now, this is the new feature. So for those that, for the last year or two, we've been waiting for the database servers to really get fantastic. They're already great, now even better. Now, whenever you run an angle, you have the ability to look at the last 500 races of that angle, and you can look the same as you do with the research section. This is it. Just click on the details button. There is, in this case, there's less than 500. So all of these races are there, and you could sort as we did with other stuff. You can sort on the finish position. You could see these when these horses come back, and you can see an awful lot in the last couple weeks. I'm going to go back to the last month. And the last month, it's 36%, so about 16 for 45 with a 32% ROI. They're the ones for the last month, the winners. Not a lot of prices, but certainly very, very interesting. And if you did want to look at, just like we do with the research section, if you did want to look at that particular race and see if you can match it up, that links out to the chart. So now with all your angle queries, whether you're looking at them, in this case, at real time, or you're playing with them and you're deciding which angles are valuable for you to use in the future, and you want to back test tens of thousands of different criteria, this details button really helps. So back to this, so Ritzy AP, besides that angle, I thought was interesting on a number of counts because last time was a career best effort, a 117 Equibase speed figure, very good, and she ran second at 10 furlongs back here in this allowance race, so I don't think 11's a problem. Plus, she's an English Channel out of an AP Indy mare, so certainly of the horses that have yet to run this far, she certainly has a shot. I'm going to go one more deep here. Into the Post is a contender, but I don't need to talk about it. I know Christina is going to probably talk about him. The other one I'm going to talk about is Unapologetic, who beat Ritzy AP in that race earlier, and then Unapologetic came back to win. That was his second win, and then he came back to run seventh in the Cougar on dirt. And certainly, since this is a turf race and that's a dirt race, I'm just going to put a line right through it, and that's one of the great features you have to ignore a racing line. You can just ignore it, and since these two are the ones that count, I'm going to go ahead and highlight them so I know these are the relevant races I'm looking at, and I have two nice wins with nice speed figures of 109 and 111. So in the Del Mar Handicap, my contenders in order are Kenji Storm, Fashion Business, Ritzy AP, Unapologetic, and I'm not completely leaving out, it's in the Post. I'm going to find a way to use him in exactas and trifectas.
Christina.
All right, so I'll just give you a quick note on Ritzy AP. You know who I will be rooting for, obviously, but there is a chance that he will not run. So Dan entered him back in this race off of the effort at Santa Rosa last week. He said that he came back yesterday morning just kind of bucking and playing around, and it seemed like a good time to take a shot at this division with him and see if he can, jump up and actually get a big victory against these types. So I think it's going to be a game day decision for Dan. He's going to want to keep an eye on him the next few days and just see how he continues to train. And he's just such a genuine horse. He tries hard every time you put the saddle on. So he doesn't want to take advantage of the fact that this horse does try so hard. He wants to make sure that he really is 100% if he's going to run him. So check scratches in the morning. So he'll make that decision on Saturday.
Christina, I don't want to influence a decision of an owner and a trainer, but you can mention that statistic, as I said, that
I will.
Horses that run in the top four and come back in 1 to 7 days over the last year, they've won 20. Let me look at it again. I think it was 22% of the time. So there it is, right there, as it's coming up. So
it's pretty remarkable too, because we kind of bubble wrap them now, don't we? And the sort of old school trainers never did. They were running back on a week's rest all the time. Quick note on It's in the Post. He's obviously a very classy horse. He's the class of the field. Took a look at the Eddie Reed last time out, and in fairness to him, that distance, 2 mile and 1/8, too short for him. But if you look at the race, and we don't have to right now, I'll just kind of save you the trouble. He really didn't run a step when they turned for home. Tyler Bays did ask him. He went to the whip. He gave him the encouragement, and he just did not show up. And you combine that with the fact that in his lifetime record, he's 0 for 10 over the Del Mar turf course. That's kind of hard to ignore. So for me, he's going to be a play against this weekend. Had the thrill of watching him compete for a long time, but I'm not sure that he is really on top of his game right now. The horse that I'm actually the most interested in is Cashman, the 11 for Neil Drysdale and Team Valor. This is a horse that is a French bred, but has competed in Germany. And Barry Irwin, he's one of those that can source horses from anywhere. And I've just noticed over the years that in terms of bringing horses that have competed in Germany, he's really one of the few that does it, and one of the few that does it very well. I actually spoke to him about the horse this morning, and he said this horse is, quote, on the top of his game. He said that the sellers overseas were looking to reduce their stable, so they actually felt very fortunate to even be able to purchase this horse and to bring him to the States. And their original plan was to run him in an allowance race just to get him going. But Drysdale was the one that said he's doing so well, put him in the Del Mar Handicap. This is the quality of horse. He has the class to compete with these types, and he's ready. So that was really enough for me. I did look at the replay of his last race at Dresden. That was on July the 14th. That's on YouTube if you wanted to Google it and bring it up. He does it all the right way. I'm not sure who he beats, but he's very impressive, and he seems to be a physically imposing colt. He's a big chestnut. He's easily recognizable, big kind of white blaze, and there's plenty of stamina with this guy. So he's actually going to be the horse that I'm going to play on top this weekend. I'm really intrigued by Cashman, provided that obviously Dan, with regard to his decision, doesn't end up in there. I'm going to be leaning towards this one. And then I wanted to talk about Fashion Business as well. It seems like the talent in this group is kind of to the outside. I think he's also a win candidate, and I think he's a horse that does need everything to go kind of his way, just in terms of the pace to set up for him. I was really impressed by the Manhattan. You showed that replay already, Ellis, but I did want to pull up the chart because you see from that little blue designation there that it is a key race. And if you look at this, you see all these next out winners. Now, Robert Bruce, we saw what he did last weekend in the Arlington Million. Channel Maker, stakes winner as well. If you want to kind of open it up, you'll see exactly which race that we're talking about with regard to Channel Maker. That's the Bowling Green last time at Saratoga. Another next out winner out of this race was like Catch and Die. I wasn't sure on that one. But stakes winner next out, the Stars and Stripes over big weekend at Arlington there. So these are very, very good horses. It's one of the best turf races of the year coming out of that Grade 1 Manhattan. And I thought he really showed a lot of quality and class. Fashion Business. I thought he rose to the occasion in that race. I talked to Billy Koch about this horse this morning because I was a little bit disappointed with his effort in the Eddie Read, and similar to It's in the Post, I do think the race was a little short for him in the mile and an eighth, but I wanted to know his thoughts, and he said that race was purely a prep. He said that the Manhattan was a big effort. It took a lot out of him. They brought him back here. He wasn't quite ready to fire again, but Phil D'Amato wanted to run him rather than continue to work him, because this race has been their summer goal all along with Fashion Business, because they want that win and you're in to get him into the Breeders' Cup. He said, we knew we didn't really have a chance last out because those horses aren't really going to come back to you at the mile and an eighth, but he did run a very fast final quarter. He did finish. He did, was cross the wire eighth in the group, but they are encouraged by what they're going to get from Fashion Business this weekend. So I think a little bit of pace up front, and he's going to come firing. Colonist is another horse that I think is interesting. I just think he's getting better right now for Hollendorfer and Drayton Van Dyke. He's the 9. He's a 4-year-old. I love watching horses kind of progress through their 4-year-old year, and I think he's one of those that is kind of connecting right now. And then you mentioned Kenji Storm. I thought it was interesting that Gary Stevens ends up there versus Ashley Love Sugar, who he sort of had a long association with. That kind of perked my interest a little bit with regard to Kenji Storm. But yeah, Cashman is the horse for me, provided that Dan doesn't run Ritzy AP. Fashion Business, I think, is going to be right there, but I'm going to hope for a price on the French-bred German race trained by the Englishman Neil Drysdale.
Now, Drysdale's had just a magical year and shipping horses around the country. Just going back to last weekend, or just yesterday, right? He got
that's right. Another feature yesterday.
Got her back on track. She hadn't won since she kept good company, but hadn't won since she broke her maiden. Good information on the Team Valor horse, and Team Valor may have themselves a very big weekend as it happens. They're scattered all over the place. Fashion Business was the horse that I was very interested in. You guys pretty much covered it. And one horse I'll mention, and I'm intrigued that Tyler Gaffleone shows up and comes out to ride for a couple of days. He's out Friday and Saturday at Del Mar, and he's got Animosity in the Oaks, and he's got Multiplier in here. And Multiplier, a horse that ran a sneaky good race in the Manhattan as well. So other than the obvious players, the only other horse that hasn't come up that I would pay attention to is Multiplier. I don't know if I am thrilled about taking a jock that doesn't necessarily know that turf course, which is a very tricky course to ride. and knowing the timing is very key at Del Mar, when to move, and he'll need to figure it out in a hurry. But he's got 2 days of mounts, and be interesting to see Gaslione out at Del Mar. Let's turn our attention to the Oaks, and I think we're all going to end up landing on the same horse. Christina?
I know we're short on time, so I'll make it kind of brief. I mean, Ollie's Candy is the horse to beat in here, and definitely the horse to beat on numbers. I think if you look at her San Clemente last time out, she was the 14 in the race, and that really did affect her chances. I mean, she was just wide clear throughout. It was her first effort on the turf course, and I was very impressed by what she was able to do and just the way she finished. I mean, she flew home. She was second, only defeated a neck. That was at the flat mile. She gets a little bit more distance to work with that come Saturday, and I think she's going to love every bit of that extra eighth. And I also think Bill Morey, he's having a real breakout year. You look at that last 30 days, he's 28%. It's a positive ROI. He's winning with first-time starters. This filly actually gave him his first grade stakes victory, which I was surprised by. That was that grade 2 summertime up. So maybe he's sitting on his first grade 1. Could be a very big weekend for Bill Morey. The only other horse that I'll just take a second to point out, because I think she's intriguing, is Colonia for Graham Motion, the 7 in here. She had some good form overseas and then made her U.S. debut in the Hatoof at Arlington. I did want to take a look at that. We can just kind of look at the replay from the quarter pole home if we have a chance, because I think what is most kind of notable in here is that she's really going to love Del Mar. Coming out of this particular race, it was a full field of 10. She was last early. She doesn't have much early speed, but she has a really sharp turn of foot, and you're going to see her kind of thread her way through under Joe Bravo there. He's going to have to wait as they turn for home. He's got horse. He's kind of standing up in the saddle, waiting for a seam, waiting for, any kind of room to swing her out. And eventually he does. And she just explodes. I love what I'm seeing from this filly. I think that getting over the firm course at Arlington she liked. I think the course right now at Del Mar is very firm. And I think she's absolutely going to love it. So I'm intrigued by her. I think as far as many of the others in there, I would give, Paved a big chance. I would give Fatal Beret a big chance just because they come out of, the Belmont Oaks, which strongest field assembled for the group at this time. And then the only other stat I wanted to look at was Graham Motion. If you open up Graham Motion's trainer stats, looking at him specifically at Del Mar and on the turf course, that was what I ended up pulling for him. Because when you think about it, if he's bringing horses in here, he did have one summer, I believe it was, where he kind of stayed pretty much the whole season. But for the most part, he's just shipping in for stakes races. He's shipping in with high-level horses, and these are hard races to just kind of parachute in and go home with the win. And he does so pretty often. You'll see right there, 27% on the turf the last couple of years over this racetrack. And a lot of those races are turf, are stakes races. A lot of them are high-level allowance. So I give Colonia a chance to defeat Ollie's Candy. I think Ollie's Candy is, the horse to beat there. Fatal Beret, Paved are live. But for me, it'll be between those two. And I think I'll probably just make a win bet on Colonia because I think you're going to get a good price on her come Saturday. What did you think, Steve, about Fatal Beret and Paved, just while he tries to get back on? Because, one of the things about Paved, I think Michael McCarthy, and we touched on him earlier with regard to the lieutenant, I think he's very good at getting horses to peak on a particular day. And the Belmont Oaks was their target race for this filly. And I thought she ran, credibly. She's only defeated 3 3/4 of a length. Now she comes back here to Del Mar. I think she's still kind of riding that wave, and her and Fatal Beret, I thought that they actually held their own against the Euros and some of the East Coast fillies in the Belmont Oaks last out.
Well, and the Belmont Oaks, I think we all ended up a little stunned when Athena blitzkrieg to the front
after a week. Yes.
It was what was so strange about what went on that day, and I went down to Belmont for the great card, and it was, we spent so much time as pundits and analysts and handicappers expecting that the North American females, that they were they would win and they were dominant and no Euro was gonna be able to come in and best ours, and that if any place the boys race, the Belmont Derby, would be where the imports would come in and beat a sort of middling bunch. And the fact that it was the opposite ended up being true, that's what was a little dumbfounding. And the way Athena just flew late. And you know, a lot of times when you're looking at these two turf courses, you know, there's a huge difference, obviously, between a Belmont Park turf course and Del Mar. And the big, wide, sweeping turns, you don't know. I mean, that's just as true on the turf course as it is on the main track. And so, you know, different physical types are going to potentially move up or down when they come to a place like Belmont. I thought paved, and I'm a big paved fan and have been since early on. You know, and she was obviously compromised in the Providencia when the thinking was there wasn't enough speed, enough pace, so let's keep her fairly close. McCarthy and I talked about that actually. Well, I think as a subplot with City of Light. So that, you know, taking a horse out of their element and asking them, particularly turf horses, and asking them to do something that takes away from their natural abilities, which in this case is to come with one run. I agree that she ran a sneaky good race in the Belmont Oaks, and you know, she comes back to Del Mar where, okay, you know, she, on the way to her maiden breaker, she ran once. I mean, we don't know what to make of that. So I'm a fan, and I don't know if she's going to get much of a pace set up in here. I think that's the biggest problem that really any of the fillies that want to rally are going to run into. Ellis is back, and let's get his opinion on the Del Mar Oaks.
Yeah, just quick. Ollie's Candy, Fatal Bear, and Paved. I think Ollie's Candy is a neck for being undefeated, and the horse that beat her, of course, is not here. I love second time doing something, so second on the grass, the physical and mental improvement that comes with that. Fatal Bear and Paved, I know you were talking about them in my brief absence here. Basically, they both ran very well. I think 10 furlongs was too far for both. I think the cutback here to 9 is going to be perfect for both. Of course, that was Paved, the distance Paved won at, and Fatal Bear as well from the race 3 back to Providencia at 9 furlongs. So both of them can run back to those races. So I make it Ollie's Candy, Fatal Bear, and Paved.
Very good. Well, let's get one last comment in, a set of thoughts, because the Alabama, we certainly have got a nice group here. This, again, a mile and a quarter, always a bit of a deciding factor. And I thought that the Alabama, considering some of the names that, you know, we thought we might get at any one point during the year, I think the group we ended up with was awfully fun, and I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to go. I don't know that Midnight Bisou has to win this race per se. I think there's, again, much like Accelerate in the Pacific Classic, I think there's horses that are well within striking distance, including some stretch-out candidates that, you know, very well might take to the slower pace going a mile and a quarter. Ellis, some thoughts on the Alabama?
Yeah, just briefly, I think Midnight Bisou lost by 2 lengths to Monomoy Girl with a 99 figure in the Acorn. I mean, Talk Blue to me did 99 to Midnight Bisou in the Acorn. When I compare Talk Blue to me to Midnight Bisou's race in the last time out in the CCA Oaks, she got a 94. She got beaten 3. I think that's a problem for Midnight Bisou. I think that Talk Blue to me ran better at the distance. I also have a little more of a concern about 10 furlongs because the Midnight Loop Repent breeding doesn't suggest 10 furlongs to me, where I don't have as much concern at all. The big thing in this race with a shorter field is that if I look at the pace projector, I think Talk Blue to me, there's no early horse here with an early running style. but Talk Move to Me is projected to be in front, and if she is in front, she's not going to get past. So I'm going to use Talk Move to Me. I'm going to try and beat Midnight Bisou in the exact. I'm going to use the horse that ran second to Talk Move to Me, which is the 6-figure Ellis Queen, and that's going to be my little exacta box. And I might play a try with Drayton Talk Move to Me over Midnight Bisou over Figuerella's Queen.
And Christina.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment that it's not just Midnight Bisou. I think she's probably going to be overbet because she is sort of the household name that everybody knows. You know, she's been kind of duking it out and unfortunately losing to Monomoy Girl so many times that everybody's very familiar with her. And I think she will run her race. But I think on numbers, it's a much closer race than it might first appear until you kind of dive into it. I actually, between Talk Move to Me and Figuerella's Queen, I thought Figuerella's Queen, you know, now that we're going the mile and a quarter, she might be able to sort of close that gap a little bit. I gave her a chance, but the horse I was most interested in was She's a Julie before. Of the replays I watched, I just thought she was so powerful in the Iowa Oaks. She was a 5.5 length winner, and she was absolutely geared down. I mean, visually what I saw was a filly that I think can go on and compete that mile and a quarter distance. She's out of a Dubai Millennium mare, so maybe that helps her out a little bit. Just the last couple of races, I think she's really coming into her own right now. So she's the horse that I'm going to play. I might play her across the board, you know, definitely in exactas if you're playing, you know, pick 4s, pick 6. I think she has a real upset possibility in this race.
I would not disagree. She really found the right time to get good. You guys mentioned Figuerella's Queen behind Talk Move to Me in the Indiana Oaks. So this is an interesting group, and you know, Coach Rocks not sure what to make, but I can tell you that after Red Ruby, you know, crushed everybody in that Delaware Oaks, Dale Roman said, "We're going to the Alabama." I mean, he had this circle, and Oxbow, the filly out of an El Prado mare. I don't know. I think much like the Pacific Classic, the same mile and a quarter scenario. You've got a lot of open-ended opportunity. Whatever you feel like you're seeing, don't be afraid to pull the trigger. Hope that those of you will pull the trigger on the promotions. 50% off a quarterly subscription to Stats Raceland. You can use it on an unlimited basis. Every card you want to peruse. Basically, you're saving $150. 20 card plan is half price, $30 versus $60. 10 card plan, same thing, $17 instead of $35. So use the code SRLQ. That's Raceland's quarter 50S. SRLQ 50S. When you check out, put that all in capital letters. We'll be together on Thursday, September 13th, in advance of the Woodbine Mile Day. I've been up there for Woodbine Mile. It's a tremendous day of racing. So look forward to that. If anybody, you're not following the new Stats Raceland account on Twitter, please do, Stats_Raceland. And, of course, the feedback address, Ellis, one more time for anybody that needs to communicate. Do a statsfeedback@equibase.com.
Statsfeedback@equibase.com, correct. Please let us know. And, of course, as you said, the new Twitter handle, @stats_racelens. And the forum is available that we've opened up to the world to share comments about it. And just go to the Stats Racelens, click on the little window that looks like the comic book message box, and you can get to our forum.
Well, and Christina, we'll be watching you on TV, of course, and we look forward to the next opportunity to talk. Best of luck to Dan, the rest of the meet at Del Mar, and Ellis. Good luck this weekend. Players, appreciate you joining us. Look forward to talking to you in 3 weeks. Best of luck.